So welcome everybody. This is very exciting to have you all joining us. I'm Mike DeLuca. This program is brought to you by my little company, Integrative Wellness and Development, LLC. And I'm very excited to have you all joining us. We have folks from all over the country, all over North America joining us. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Very excited to have you here. And I'm very excited about this topic. This is a topic that touches everyone. In one or more times in our life, we are all going to face the experience of loss, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, the loss of a pet or an animal, the loss of a way of life, loss of wealth, loss of all kinds of things that can happen. And so what I wanted to do is tonight share some perspectives and some tools to help us all in dealing with loss. Tonight is an educational program. This program is not meant to diagnose, treat, prevent any type of illness. This is not a therapy session. It really is an educational session for sharing tools, techniques, and sharing a mindset of dealing with loss. So I wanted to, I whipped this PowerPoint up together. I wanted to share it with you. It'll sort of be a guide for us moving through tonight. So yeah, this is it. So this is every Sunday I have this Your 9 Step Sunday Mastermind, and tonight's topic is turning the pain of loss into fuel for growth. And so, I was talking earlier about this concept, and I thought, you know what? All of the times that I've been through loss and I've experienced this pain of losing something, I really began to see that it was very much connected to the experience I've had for decades in working out at the gym, training in martial arts, training in athletics. And I found, there was a real correlation between this process of building physical muscle through creating stress, through the adding weight to ourselves, and taxing the muscle. And so I wanted to look at these components of building physical muscle and compare those to the components of dealing with loss and having to build emotional and spiritual muscle from the event of loss. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, so let me get into this. So let's look at when we're building muscle, okay? The reason we build muscle by working out is we are adding a tremendous amount of more stress to the muscle than it normally experiences. And our desires to become stronger, so we add more weight than we have lifted in our prior exercise situation. And we're also adding more repetitions, which is creating stress, which is creating a need for that muscle to perform greater than it is programmed to and used to doing. And so there is an overwhelming stress to the point of where the muscle is overstressed. And then the muscle begins to tear very finely, but there is a tearing process that happens so that the older, weaker muscle fibers, muscle tissue, breaks apart so that newer, stronger, more resilient muscle can be built. So what happens is, from the overwhelming stress and taxing the muscle tears, and now we go through a period of having to go through rest. We need to feed our muscle with proper nutrition, a long branch chain amino acids, proteins, water, lots of water, Some people use creatine, but we need to put nutrients and feed the muscle, and we need to rest, and we need to allow the muscle to heal in order for it to be rebuilt and rebuilt stronger and stronger. And then what happens is the new, stronger muscle can handle bigger stress. Does that make sense? So taking this mindset, taking this visualization, let's think about what happens, right? When we have something or someone that we love, okay? Normally what's happening is the normal process of interacting with people and things and experiences that we love and possessions that we love, we are interacting a great deal from our physical state, our brain is getting used to that, having that relationship, that interaction, and there are sort of like umbilical cords built between our brain and the concept and image of the individual, the experience, the job, the possession, etc. But then there is an emotional umbilical cord that we are feeding emotionally that individual or place or thing, and they are feeding us emotionally. And there creates this cord between us, and this cord to between brain and between the emotions. There also becomes a cord with our memory, an attachment to memory. And finally, there's an attachment to our thinking, our mental self. So we've built a mental, memory, emotional, physical, and neurological connection with the person, place, or thing or experience that we love. And while they are still in our orbit, this back and forth of mutual nutritional feeding, right, is going back and forth, back and forth. And this all connects to our higher self. Our higher self is experiencing all of this through these subcomponents, these lower aspects of it. Or we call them the lower bodies, the mental body, the memory body, the emotional body, and the physical body and the brain. But what happens is over a period of time from when we're young, through our parents, our culture, our religion, our educational system, our media, our friends, all of our social interactions, we begin to interact the same way with the people, places, and things that we love and connected with and are attached to. And that causes us to make the same choices, have the same behaviors and same reactions and the same experiences and the same feelings, right? But what happens when inevitably this goes away, right? What happens when this goes away? Let's just move it out of the way here. We still have these umbilical cords here that are used to being fed physically, emotionally, through memory and through our mind. But the relationship is no longer there in the physical. And through our programming culturally and through our training, through our education, there is this massive hole. And what happens is it begins to create physical and neurological stress. It creates tremendous emotional storms because we're so used to being fed that way, and now it's not there. And we tend to then move back and forth into memories of the past And those memories get stronger, and we get more attached to the memories, and that creates more emotional stress, and that creates more physiological stress. And then mental stress. We're thinking about it. We're running in a loop of can't stop thinking about it, can't stop thinking about it, can't stop remembering the memories, can't stop reacting emotionally, and can't stop reacting with stress, both physical and neurological, as well as emotional and psychological stress. Meanwhile, our higher self is watching this in a detached way, a quiet way, a passive way. But we are still struggling with this down here because most of the time, unless we've been training ourselves to deal with these situations as they come up of loss in a balanced way and see them as a means of strengthening ourselves, there is going to be imbalance here. So what's necessary is to create new thoughts, new choices, new behaviors, new experiences that will create new feelings and will create new results from a much higher level. And so this is the goal, right? We went from this, we go to this, right? To where we move our interaction with the person, place, thing, experience that we love, but we begin to work at developing our spiritual muscle, right? Where we are interacting with our world and interacting with others from our higher perspective, our higher self, that does not have the reactions, the attachments, and the level of pain and loss that is coming from these areas here. That pain and loss, those feelings are real. The brain feels it and it is real. The emotional body feels it and it's real. Our memory feels it and it's real. Our mind feels it and it's real. But if we learn to build a new muscle, if we learn to shift our perspective from down here to beginning to realize we can interact forever with the people, the places, the things, the experiences, and all of the people, places, and things we love that was such an integral part of our life, physically, emotionally, through memory and mentally. If we can learn to move up into our higher self, working from that state, and then begin to use tools and techniques to continue connecting and having a nurturing relationship with the people, places, and things we've loved and lost. This builds a new spiritual connection that is incredibly powerful, incredibly painless, incredibly nurturing, uplifting, and it helps us evolve in all ways. Is that making sense? Yes or yes? Thumbs up? Okay. So how do we do this? How do we do this, right? How do we build new emotional and spiritual muscle to deal with transforming the energy? Because when we experience something and we react, it creates energy. And that energy will affect all parts of us. But if we can learn to transform that energy from an energy of loss and reaction to an energy of growth and unfoldment and strengthening, we can take what would be devastating experiences for us in the past and for others who operate from a much lower reactive habit of consciousness. We can rise above the limitations of pain and loss. It's going to be there. We're human. We have a brain. We have a physical body. We have emotion. We are going to continue to feel and experience loss. but we don't have to react to it anymore. We can choose how we act with it as we go through our own personal healing process. And it's different for everybody. The length of time is different for everybody. But the components we can consciously use right now are, number one, shifting your focus, learning to shift your focus from the limited interaction of just our physical self and our emotional self, right, and our memory self and our mental self. We can learn to begin to go inside and use a more inner focus through contemplation, meditation, prayer, dreams, even, right? Very powerful dreams to connect, right? We can use things that create inspiration for us, things we can read, things we can listen to, right? We can create affirmations about how we are choosing to act when we enter into painful situations that are connected to our loss or the change in our life. We can also practice the powerful spiritual energetic of gratitude. And then we can take this energy and move it into service. Because when we take all of the energies, whether they are constructive and positive, or whether they are destructive or negative, or they are painful, energy is still energy, and we can transform that energy through the higher self into something that is useful for service to others. We can also use daily practices that continue to build and heal us, right? Choosing to do things that build and heal us and not to do things that create painful reactions and memories, or hanging out with people, places, activities, thoughts that support our healing and don't sabotage it, right? And finally, by becoming part of a supportive community, getting support from someone and giving support from someone in a supportive community. Just like our Sunday masterminds are a supportive community. We are taking the technology, the systems, the learning, the practices that we've built in my program and in our interaction together, and we are reinforcing that with each other in a positive, supportive way. Right? So I'm going to stop here. And I want to open this up to discussion. And if you would use your little hand, raising the hand electronically, the little golden hand, which you see down in your reactions section down at the bottom of the Zoom screen here. I'll take some questions or some comments or sharing, and then I want to bring somebody on who's incredibly special to me. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to bring him on right now because it builds very nicely on what I'm talking about, and then we will have some questions, comments, and discussion. But I'd like to bring on someone who's very, very special to me. He is my brother-in-law, but he is my brother of the soul. He is personally responsible for all of the work that I've done over the decades in helping people with dealing with their grief and turning painful situations into powerful healing. So, Joe, I'm going to welcome you. We are on both Zoom and we are on streaming live on Facebook. And I'm going to add a pin to you so that you can come on the screen. Hey, Joe Hyatt, welcome. And we are all extremely grateful that you are here today. And Joe, I had mentioned in in the presentation that one of the things that we can do is by going within, by connecting through practices of contemplation, meditation, raising our energy, and also by working with our dreams, we're capable of connecting with our higher self, which can facilitate powerful discovery, realization, and healing, but also open up avenues where we can use gratitude and service to touch the lives of others and also in that way facilitate our own healing. And I was wondering if you would share with the folks, you can unmute yourself and share with the folks your story about how you got involved with this and how you've helped these hundreds and hundreds of people over the years deal with turning the pain of loss into the power of healing.
Sure, Mike, thanks. Appreciate the invitation tonight. It began for me in November of 1986 when my 5.5-year-old son died very suddenly. We went from my belly hurts to talking about disconnecting life support in about 36 hours. And at the time I was a young man, very unprepared for that, and leaned on a lot of people who invited me, people in the community that I had no idea had lost children, but they invited me into their support group. And, I began doing the work first on a monthly basis and then on a weekly basis. Tried a little bit of counseling, was kind of pushed by my PCP, primary care physician, to go on some medication. And we tried that twice, and I rejected it twice because it sort of took everything away. And as much as I didn't like what I was experiencing, I disliked more feeling nothing. I would say that for about 18 months, I fumbled along. I didn't do very well with my career. Personal relationships fell apart because I just didn't deal well with what was happening to me or what had happened to my son. But during that time, I consistently went to this group called the Compassionate Friends, and it was just people who had lost children from all different reasons. And through that fellowship, learned that I could offload that which I was carrying from week to week and running it through my head constantly, distracting me from everything, including trying to drive to work, and making me a menace on the highway. I learned that I could sort of dump it verbally at these meetings to a place that was safe. So I learned about the importance of safe people. Through them, I also learned that I could put it into a journal, and that was a safe place as long as I kept that journal hidden from anybody who would, misuse it or do me harm or whatever. And very, very slowly learned that I could recover from this loss. It wasn't my fault. And just because I had been involved in the rescue of other people didn't necessarily mean that I was supposed to be involved in my son's rescue, because I failed at that technically. Then I met Mike. I met Mike at about, I guess I was closing in on the 2-year mark. I met him through my now wife, and he introduced me to some other ideas, which was, well, take this into contemplation. Write a very brief letter, throw it in an envelope, put it under your pillow, asking for dreams for guidance. And so it was just baby steps. And it worked so well that I began bringing that to the group, to the support group that I was now running, because those folks that invited me had moved on. Then I moved physically and found that there was no such group in the new town that I moved to. So I started a group, got affiliated with the national chapter, and Mike began to speak probably once every 3 months at this group. And a lot of these folks felt genuinely supported and relieved by what they experienced through the conversations that we had each week and each month. And then what Mike brought in the way of contemplative exercises, and again, asking for those dreams and asking for guidance through them, and to be patient, to go ahead and feel those things that we feel. We feel the disconnection, we feel the tearing of those umbilical cords, and that just plain hurts. If you deny it, you're just delaying it. So go ahead and feel it. Then you can find yourself having brief periods of time that are improved. Oh, got through the whole day, didn't cry. Hooray for me. Then the time frame would expand. It would go from maybe a day to maybe 2 days. And then suddenly you realize you went almost a whole week without breaking down. And you realize that you were also helping a few more people. And it felt very, very balanced, because I was helped by total strangers when I was invited to those early support group meetings. My then wife came to the first one, never went to another one, which devastated me, because I thought, oh my God, we've lost a child together. Shouldn't we try to do this together? But obviously that meant no. She had a different path and a different mechanism and a different path that she needed to follow. But that also hurt. So I had to deal with that hurt. I had to deal with the hurt of my family being disappointed in me because I wasn't doing such a great job of getting myself to work. But when I went to this group, these folks just said, yeah, we understand. It's pretty terrible. And as much as my own son's loss was horrific for me, I met people who had worse losses than me. Now, they may have thought that my loss was worse, but I sure thought theirs was worse. And there was that balance of empathy where you don't feel like your situation is the ultimately worst, and that makes you feel a little bit better. And you're able to be a little bit more productive in the contemplations, and then you're a little bit more productive in your outreach to others. When I started the group, because I moved to a town where there was no group, a lot of it was focused on me, very quietly, silently. But as time went on, it wasn't focused on me at all. And what I recognized later was that by not focusing on myself at all, I was actually really developing myself without even knowing it. And I can only look back and say that after 35 years, but when I was experiencing it, it was a little bit confusing. I kept moving forward with it, but I wasn't always sure that I was doing the right thing. And so it was nice to have somebody like Mike to check in with every few months, to have him come back to the group. It was a little bit interesting because where we were holding these group meetings was a very particular religious organization that has extremely strict rules. And they were not 100% comfortable with what it was that we were doing. So we actually just invited them to sit in on it. And they became totally comfortable with it because it wasn't a threat. They were concerned that it was more than really all it was. It was really just an exchange of love between sometimes strangers, but eventually not strangers. And healing took place. And like Mike said, you know, it's that breakdown of the fibers, and relationships are very much like that. But when you build new ones, you build them stronger than the original ones were there. And, you know, there were times when Mike would say, your heart has broken open, but the seed of love can then be planted in that spot. And then when it grows over stronger. I've used that for, it's got to be at least 30 years. As I talk with people, I still run an online support group on Facebook with about, I think, 3,100 people across the world. And it's the same story constantly, not the story of loss, but the story of connection and understanding. So I think as an introduction goes, that's probably good enough, Mike. What do you think?
Wow, that's a tremendous introduction. Joe, I want to jog your memory of a couple of really cornerstone experiences that we had together. And one was you had told me when we first started talking about, the healing power of working with contemplation and dreams, that for those 2 years, you had not ever had a dream with Danny.
That's right.
And this was something that you wanted so badly. And, so we did an exercise where, we focused, we, connected to our higher self. We chanted a powerful word, a charged word, and then we visualized, and then you did this before you went to sleep, and just visualize connecting in a higher place as your higher self to the higher self of your son, Danny. And then it wasn't long before you had a dream with him, but it was more than a dream. It was a real connection, and it was real time. And would you share a little bit of the conversation that you had with him that was really monumental in taking you to a whole nother level?
That's a little bit difficult to do, but I will try.
Okay.
It's still very vivid for me.
Okay.
And very heartfelt. But he essentially he introduced me to the essence of what God is. And that was something that had escaped me my entire life, because I was raised a very strict Christian religion, lots of rules, regulations, dogma, but this was the highest form of simplicity. And it was pure love. And I'll leave it at that.
And I appreciate your generosity, Joe. I know that this touches tender places. The one thing I wanted to add to the folks who are listening is that connection of pure love brought on a conversation where Joe's son Danny explained to him that he did not ever have to have guilt about not having been able to save the physical self of him, that it was actually part of the divine plan, that he had made an agreement that he would leave at a very young age to break the heart, to open the heart, and that it would save Joe's life. And he was willing to have accepted that role. And this is a very powerful concept. And Joe, not soon after you and I talked about your experience in your dream, I met a woman at a conference, and she was in great pain, very angry. And she had heard me talking about this concept of, connecting spiritually to the ones we've lost, and that there is a connection and a contract between us and all of the people we love and all of the experiences we're connected to. And the way we come into each other's life and the way we leave each other's life is a contract of love, service, inspiration, and unfoldment that goes beyond our mind's ability to understand through the normal concepts of matter, energy, space, and time. So I was talking with this woman. She approached me and she said, I can't get over my anger about the loss of my brother. And I said, I'm so sorry. Could you tell me a little bit? She said, well, my brother was on a long flight and he was over the ocean, and he had a very serious peanut allergy. And this was at the time where peanut allergies were just beginning to, be understood, and airlines really weren't connected yet, and really weren't having policies and procedures yet to deal with severe allergies. And as a result, there was a little bit of peanut oil in one of the salad dressings that was on his salad, and he immediately had a violent reaction, went into anaphylactic shock, And there was no equipment on the plane, and they were obviously many hours away from being able to turn around and come back, right, to the continent. So there he was, and his life slipped away. They tried CPR with their limited abilities, but he needed something more, and they just didn't have it. And so she said, I was so angry that they did not have the things that they needed, and they did not have the policies, and they did not, did not take the time and the care to deal with allergies. So I went in for a second, and just took a second, and I felt this surge and this message coming through. And I looked at her and I said, do you realize your brother's death has now resulted in the saving of millions of people's lives who travel on aircraft? Because now there is tremendous care about allergies, but also there are defibrillators on every aircraft. And flight crew have to be trained on how to use that. So do you see, it's possible that your brother, when he came into this life, made a contract of service that in exchange for the shortening of his life, the lives of millions of people would be saved. And Joe, for you, in exchange for the pain and the sorrow and the guilt that you went through, you have touched the lives of thousands and thousands and thousands of families to help them deal with their grief. And this is a gift of love from you. It's a gift of love from Danny. It's a gift of love from the divine. And this is a big part of this whole transformation of moving from pain of loss to moving into the power for growth and for healing. Right? But it requires us to do things in order to build that muscle. And Joe, you mentioned the power of journaling. And obviously this is near and dear to my heart. It's a big component of my program and my business. But, I remember two instances of the support group that you invited me to. One instance was a young mother who had a brand new baby, not even a year old, I think. And as all mothers are, she was exhausted all of the time, had very little sleep, and had one of those swings, that have a kind of cord that comes down. The baby sits in that and swings. And she put the baby in that swing, and she said, I'm just going to lay down for 2 minutes. And the baby was swinging, and the baby would fall asleep when it was in the swing. So she said, I'm just going to lay down for a few minutes. Well, she woke up several hours later, and she jumped up and she went to check on her child, and the baby had somehow gotten caught up in the rope, the connector of the swing, and had strangled itself, had passed away. And as you can imagine, this was one of the most devastating things that can happen to someone, and especially a mother. And she was racked with guilt for years. I should have, if only I had, I could have, how dare I go to sleep? How dare I do that, right? But she happened to be in this session that Joe had invited me to, and we took her through a journaling exercise where we opened up the lines of communication at the higher level of higher self to higher self. And in the journal that we had prepared for the attendees, she wrote a letter to her child. And, she talked, and I remember like it was yesterday. She said, I am so sorry. I am so sorry I fell asleep. I'm so sorry that you had to struggle and you had to die in such a painful way. I'm so sorry I didn't do my job as a mother. I'm so sorry. And I feel so guilty. And I wish it was me who had gone and not you. And then she was instructed to spend a moment opening her heart and quieting her consciousness, using a charged word to shift into a higher place. And then in her journal, we asked her to write a letter back from her child. And the whole group was doing this. And obviously, this was a very powerful and emotional time. But she was one of the first to raise her hand to share what she had written. And I was astounded because basically the letter back was, "Dear Mommy, I love you so much. Please don't feel guilty. Please don't be angry with yourself. It was not your fault. It was my time to be here for a very short time. But the love that you gave me as my mommy in just a few short months that I lived on earth was greater than the love given for a lifetime that other children have experienced. For that, I am so grateful. So please know I love you. You can always see me. You can always feel me. You can always communicate with me. And please know that you are special." That alone was amazing and miraculous for this person who carried that kind of pain and guilt. But the story doesn't end there, because this woman shared her experience with another woman who came to another workshop that Joe invited me to do. And this other woman had lost her baby due to contaminated baby formula that was tainted with lead. And unfortunately, a lot of babies have suffered because of these tainted formulas coming from overseas. And she was so angry. But when she went through this exercise, she received a similar message from her child. And to basically summarize it all, she realized that through the loss of her baby, she was inspired to create a foundation and a movement to supply new mothers of limited financial resources with clean, pure, safe baby formula. And as a result of her pain and her anguish and her loss, by going within, by practicing working from a higher state, by journaling, communicating, and understanding that when the people we love, the experiences we love are removed from our physical presence, we can reconnect with them in our higher self. I have a lot more stories, but I do want to connect now with the group. Again, if you could raise your electronic hand, I will call on you. Joe, again, thank you so much. Would you stay on and maybe comment along with me on some of the questions that the folks have? Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, raise your hand. So Nancy, we're going to have you on first. If you would unmute yourself. You have a question or comment?
I have a comment and a question. And Joe, thank you so much for sharing your story. I just feel a little compelled to say, if anyone's going through acute grief in this moment, I'd like to offer my compassion. Because I think for me, it's my question, taking in this cerebral information, well, even if it's from my higher self, it took me a while after I had a big loss. I had a series of losses, and it took me a while to assimilate all of that. And so is that normal, which I think it is. And another thing that's kind of funny, but when, and I don't know if this is strange or not, is that when I was in a huge grief group that met 5 days a week, and we had all different kinds of losses, and then we sort of split up into groups by loss. But when I heard, one of the first things we learned was never to compare one loss to another. And that really helped me a lot, because when I heard about someone else's child being murdered, that didn't help me with my situation necessarily. Now I think it would help me, but it's a few years later. But in the first couple of years, I was very self-absorbed, trying to survive more. And I was trying some of these things, and it actually did work. I had lots of dreams about some of my loved ones who had passed on, especially my husband. But I think there's a process with, and I have a few questions here, but so pick whichever one you think is worthy of responding to. But I think it's about facing ourselves. And the loss is an opening for us to face ourselves. And it can be rather brutal to face ourselves, depending on what we believe we are or aren't. And what Joe shared about love and who we are as love, we can get to that, things soften a bit, but getting there can be quite the journey. So anyway, I guess the biggest one is, does it make sense that it takes time to be able to incorporate some of these absolutely wonderful, valuable concepts, which I still use today?
I think if it's okay, Mike, I'll give my thoughts first and then let you respond. I think, we've anybody that's experienced a meaningful loss has probably studied that, there's 5 stages of grief and there's these steps. The funny thing about those is that none of them happen in order. It seems pretty random. And the beginning is nothing but self-absorbed. So, you asked if that's, I think you said, is it normal or is it expected? And, what I've learned is that normal is a spectrum. It's from way over here to way over here. And everybody has their own way. And when I first joined this discussion this evening and heard Mike talking about, as you said, these very cerebral things, yes, once I got there, it was wonderful. It was so helpful to know that I could take all of this energy and what started as pure anxiety and terror, I could begin to convert those into some very positive things. But those first 18 months were horrible. And the first 6 or 9 were probably all self-absorbed. So I think what you said has a tremendous amount of validity. It's nice to have that goal of being able to convert the experience into something positive and into works of gratitude and helping others, but absolutely not in the beginning. I was not capable of. I did witness some people that got to their that goal quicker than me, but it definitely wasn't fast for me. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
No, and I want to support that 100%. Each one of us is a very unique individual, and we react, we deal with, we process things differently. And it's important to have the patience, compassion, love, and patience, with ourselves that we have with others, when we are going through a situation like this. I created a PowerPoint with some quick, philosophical, techniques and things that I've seen work over the years. But as Joe said, each one of us is going to go through our own timeline, our own process. We're going to have ups and we're going to have downs. And sometimes the downs are low and sometimes the ups are not that quite up and sometimes they're high. it's unique for each of us, but it brings us back to the importance of connecting with the power inside of us and connecting with other supportive people and groups who have the experience and the knowledge and the patience to give each one of us the time we need personally in our own cycle, of healing. So 100%, Joe, it's really important to have that patience and compassion and patience. Does that make sense, Nancy?
Yes, thank you both very much. That was really helpful. I appreciate it.
Okay, we have time for another question or comment before we wrap up. No other questions. Okay. Well, I want to just review something quickly with folks. Joe, again, thank you very much. And I know that you're going to be hopping off soon. If folks are interested or would like to know more about the organizations that Joe is involved in, DM me on Facebook, and I'll be happy to connect you with him, and he can direct you to where and how he sees fit. So, Joe, thanks again.
Mike, the only question I have, Mike, is whether Nancy has a desire to have any more of those questions answered, or was just that one enough? I see we have still 9 minutes to go.
Yeah, okay. Nancy, do you have other questions?
No, that was the biggest one. Thank you. I do have a comment that I was in, I think, reaching out for help. I was really brave when I did it and extremely helpful. I reached out and got into a guy named Mike DeLuca's program. and I also was in an ongoing support group with David Kessler, who's a world-renowned grief person. And I think that combination really, I hate to say saved me, but it kind of saved me. So that's all.
That's great. Thanks a lot. I just was concerned there was something still left there. Thank you.
Well, for those of you who are part of this, oh, wait, Jean, please join in.
Thank you. We've experienced a lot of loss in my family, but recently my sister-in-law passed away. My brother's in Arizona, and my sister-in-law has a special needs son. He is 30, but he has lived with my brother and sister-in-law for, this whole time. My brother pretty much raised him from when he was about 7. And we've done a lot of FaceTime. He is, my other sister and I are going out there, in fact, right after Easter. And in FaceTiming with him, does anybody have any suggestions? Now, like I said, he's like 34, but like mentally he's a lot younger, and him and his mom were like this, right? And he keeps saying, I want to bring her back. He wants to keep all her clothes. He wants to keep her car. And we've been talking, and and I think he has understood a lot. I told him how, like, a lot of people will take a favorite shirt and make a teddy bear, or put it on a stuffed animal and have that part of the person. I'd like to share what I learned tonight with him, which I will when we go out, because you don't want somebody to pull that person back. You want to, like you're teaching, Mike, to reach them on that spiritual level, like soul to soul. So I'm not sure at what level he grasps things, and I told my brother this. So any suggestions or anything other way I can maybe help him?
I'll give it a shot, Mike, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I would probably try to sort of solve this puzzle through questions that you ask him directly about how he views things and what does love mean to him. And if somebody's not going to come back, What kinds of things would make a difference for him? I like your idea of, gathering things up and making some kind of a clothing item or a cloth item that you can that person can hang on to. That is his connection. But I would probably try to meet him at his level before trying to help him solve the puzzle. Ask him about all the pieces first.
Okay, I like that. So ask him, how does he see things? How does he view it? And what was the second thing you said? I can't write that fast.
Oh, no, I'm sorry about that. And Mike, please, by all means, give her my contact information if you'd like to connect beyond
Yeah.
just tonight.
Thank
I
you.
most definitely do that. But also, Joe, from, experiences with the center, which you were on the board and were connected with for so long. There were so many wonderful groups with very, very young children. And there are lots of activities that can be done creatively to get him to make the connection from what's going on inside of him to what's going on outside. And a support group and a grief counselor that is experienced working with children or people with, different levels of, intellectual capacity. There's all kinds of places and techniques. I've found personally the common ground that connects everyone at every stage is dreams. And just getting him to pay attention to his dreams with his mom and start talking about those dreams and building that connection on that inner state, right, can do a tremendous amount. And that combined with what Joe talked about, and it's important to be where he is, be in his world, listen to his voice, see through his eyes, and then he will connect and open up to what he's experiencing, and then he can begin to grow into building a healthy connection in this higher level with his mom. Right? We need to do a better job in this world right now in helping our children understand that we exist on many levels, many dimensions, and take the fear and dread out of death and bring the understanding that it's moving into just higher levels of consciousness and dimension. But his mom will never be gone or abandon him. Her love never leaves him. The connection inwardly never goes away.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Real quickly, referencing what Mike said about this center that I worked with for years, we had support groups that met every single week. And the age groups were like 2.5 to 5, and then 5 to 7, and then 7 to 9, and so forth. And in each group, the activities that we did were not sitting and talking like this. Often it was a puppet show, or it was building with blocks, or it was playing a board game. While there might be a conversation that takes place, and there might not be one, but they always drove it. And so many kids did so much work while playing games that we tried to actually bring that into some of the young adult groups, because it takes their minds off the stress of the anxiety of the loss. They're into the game, and then they just blurt things out, and you learn so much that way. And it's really passive, and it takes time and patience, lots of patience, but it's really remarkable. And little kids, 2.5 years old, have dreams about their parents when they're able to relax. And now I'll be quiet because it's exactly 1 minute before I know you got to end.
Well, thank you guys very much. That's a lot to work with. So thanks.
You are
Hey,
welcome.
you're very, very welcome, Gene. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your question. Well, it is that 1 minute before we promised we would sign off. I do want to remind folks that we do have a very powerful journaling program that's designed to build a bridge between our inner self and inner world and our outer world. And the goldmasteryjournal.com program is there to support and help people. If people have questions, for those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live, just, messenger me, DM me if you want more information. But goldmasteryjournal.com is a journaling system to help individuals build not only that interconnection, but build a daily step-by-step discipline of inspiration, affirmation, contemplation, a gratitude, doing the things that are the things that will create positive results, not doing the things that create the negative results, being with people, places, and things that support you and staying away from what sabotages, and then also creating an opportunity to be of service to the world, integrating that with your dreams. And we have a very robust dream journaling system built in. And then finally connecting with your values and virtues exploration. It really helps us connect with the very highest within us. That just makes the whole process of this daily journaling a powerful experience and personal development, personal unfoldment, and self-discovery. And a part of all techniques and aspects of healing and goal achievement comes from building a powerful relationship with yourself, building a powerful connection of self-knowledge. And through the self-knowledge, we connect with our higher self, and we have the tools and the state of consciousness to begin to deal with the more difficult challenges that come in life. And then finally, we have a weekly support mechanism for folks. And I think that's been a very, very powerful tool. So encourage you all, if you haven't yet experienced that, goldmasteryjournal.com or DM me and Facebook Messenger. We're happy to give you more information. And I am creating a custom journaling system just for the healing of loss. And it's going to be slightly adapted to give people the opportunity to use the journaling system to support their process of healing. And that will be coming soon. So we'll let you know about that. So again, I want to thank you all here that are joining us on Zoom. Thank you all who are joining us on Facebook Live. Appreciate you taking all of this time, giving us your attention, your time, and your love. I hope that tonight was beneficial for you. I am going to be doing something like this every Sunday night, trying to bring value and love and tools to you and to the rest of the world. And I look forward to seeing some of you again next Sunday. And I want to wish you all the very, very best. I love you all. I care about you all. And I wish you the very best in all aspects of your life. Thank you, and we'll see you again. And Joe, once again, thank you so much for your generosity, your love, and your compassion tonight. It's really appreciated.
Thank you, Mike. I love meeting everybody.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mike.
You're all very welcome. Thanks for being here. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.